Today's topic is when culture fails, strategy fails. Why your best people leave, which relates to the pillar of responsible leadership. Goodmorning BSN is organized by the BSN Impact Center for Great Leadership. The center is an initiative of BSN generously founded by the Culture Factor Group and sponsored by new energy company Chint Global. The Impact Center for Great Leadership is the place where BSN alumni and other managers and leaders from companies and society meet each other to share insights and to create new practical knowledge. You can also contact the Impact Center for in-company programs to further grow the talent and teams within your organization. And of course, you can also contact the Impact Center if you wish to be a presenter, if you have a topic you wish to present, or to be a reflector. Our presenter today is Uchechi Agwu. She's the managing consultant at Culture Keepers Consulting Limited and a certified learning and development specialist with over 28 years of experience across banking and professional services. A former senior banking executive and turnaround leader, she brings deep expertise in leadership development, managerial psychology, and organizational culture. Uchechi is widely recognized for uncovering the root causes of performance challenges and creating psychologically safe environments for sustainable development and change. She's a CMD accredited management trainer, LDNI certified L&D specialist, and a trained organizational culture consultant. Her work delivers clarity, energy, and practical leadership tools that align with performance with purpose. Our reflector for today is Kuro Ngoboh. He's our reflector. He's the head of faculty at Purple Plethora Concepts and an ex-banker with 16 years of experience in Nigeria's top banks, or three of Nigeria's top banks, GT Bank, Access Bank, and UBA. He bagged 2 master's degrees during his time in banking, an MSc in managerial psychology, and an MSc in entrepreneurship and innovation. Kuro loves to make profound things simple and has facilitated training in 7 African countries for close to a decade. He is a learning and development professional with the Learning and Development Network International LDNI. I'm going to hand over to you now, Uchechi, to do your presentation for us on a very, very interesting topic. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good morning, BSN. Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Prof. Good morning, Juanita again. Paul, Kuro. Yes, good morning. Okay, thank you. It's always an honor to be on Good Morning BSN. And this morning we'll be talking on the subject when culture fails, strategy fails, why your best people are leaving. Part of what we do, I'll be sharing my slides in a moment. Part of what we do in the field is recruitment. And there's a particular client, we've had a contract with them for a couple of years now. And I had an experience not too long ago, which actually triggered some of what I'm going to be saying today. We did recruit someone, one of their chief officers, and he did very well in our interviews. And when we recommended him, he had 3 levels of interview in one day. By the next day, he had medicals done, and by the 3rd day, he'd been issued an offer. So all he needed to do was to resign and then come join the company, which he did. Now, in 60 days from his recruitment, we get a request asking us to fill that position again. And I was concerned. I was very concerned because I knew that he was looking forward to that job. The company was very happy to hire him. And he was so good. He was really, really good for what he was hired for. Now, what did I find out when I started investigating? I was particularly pained when we advertised that position again, and this same person was one of the first people to apply. And I said to myself, does it mean he left without having a job? Because when I contacted the company, why are you making this request again? Is it a mistake? They said, no, he left. And I said, why? They said, well, they believe that he had another offer and he just wanted to start with them. And so he had moved on. All right. So I went to him and I said, why did you leave? And he says, well, I come in as a back office staff and I'm given a sales budget. This sales budget is 50% weighting on my KPIs. I think that's a lot. And then again, I'm required to be off work one day of the week so that I can go follow up on my sales leads. And then he says, but the part he really couldn't cope with was the fact that at least once a week, everyone is called up and everyone is expected to say what they have achieved. So it's a case of, what did you bring in? So on these lines, what did you bring in? What did you do? What have you done? Okay. I also spoke with the boss. His opinion was different. He said, well, I did everything that I could have. I embraced this person. He had my private number. He could reach me at any time. I'm not happy he didn't have enough courtesy to come discuss with me before leaving, whatever his fears were. And when I said, well, this is what he said, and he says to me, well, those are really not, those are small numbers. Those are not even, big numbers to have scared him. I could have guided him. I could have told him where to go, how to go about it. And then he says that he's very sure that he got some certification and he had a job that was dependent on that certification. And so he moved. I told him, well, that's not the case because he reapplied for this position. He wouldn't do that if he moved on to another job. So let me go to my slides now so that we can look at some, we can look at this together and see. Just a moment. Okay. So first, let's understand what strategy is.
Uchechi, we can't see your presentation.
Can you see it?
No, we can't see it yet.
Oh, I'm already sharing. Okay. I'll do that again.
In the meantime, while you sort that, let me just welcome Rowan van Aman and Chineri from Abuja, Kolovak from Lagos, Anis from The Hague, Esther from Lagos, Tina and David from Abuja, and Uchechi from Lagos. Welcome this morning.
Do you want me to share? Okay, all right.
Yes. Okay.
There we go. Something's happening now. You
All
just
right.
need to make it full screen for us.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay. Full screen now. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. So when culture fails, strategy is certain to fail. Now, in strategy, there are all of the carefully constructed roadmaps that we usually have as an organization. It's a beautiful plan of what we want to achieve. Now, the fact is that strategy lives in documents, but culture lives in daily behavior, because culture is what defines what we do on a daily basis, the how we achieve what we have in mind. So now this particular boss saw a situation where every everybody in the office is a salesperson, can bring in sales. So everyone is assigned a sales target. And it has worked so well that most of the sales that have moved the company forward have actually been from maybe front office staff and not necessarily sales staff. So it was first and foremost a case of, oh, I can't have 100 people on my staff list and I'm working with only 30 or 40 salespeople. So it was all about the numbers. It was always all about the numbers. Culture shows up in how decisions are made, how leaders respond to pressure. Now, I've always said that when pressure comes, it is the default values that we have, the true values we have as people. That's what comes to the fore immediately. How mistakes are treated, what behaviors are rewarded, what behaviors are ignored. So now within this company, as I began to unravel some of the happenings, I got to know that the company has pivoted in the last few years, and they've made a couple of acquisitions. And one of the companies that they acquired, everyone in that company resigned in one day. And this was after they started working with them for some months. And when I investigated further, because we get to interact because the people are out looking for work. So when we put up for positions, they come on board. And we found out that some of them were asking for salary increases. They didn't get it. They couldn't get it. And they were told, well, when you work and we see your results, then we can give you the salary increase. But they've just been acquired. So it means that you've got different people who are earning different things within the same organization, and they're all expected to perform. So employees experience culture in meetings. So when they come for those meetings, like this particular chief officer that we hired, he said every meeting was a dread for him. He could no longer sleep, he could no longer eat, because every day he comes, he's in that fear that he's a failure, a woeful failure, because not only does he not have any numbers to present, he doesn't even know the first thing to do. He doesn't know how to go about it. So he felt very, very unsafe in the environment. He could not even express his fear to his boss. The emails, what kinds of emails are we sending? What is the tone in our email? That is what defines us. That is what defines our environment where staff work. That is what determines whether or not they will stay. Performance reviews. How do we go about it? For him, he felt that, if he even had a private session, and these reviews started from the very first week that he arrived. And then he was confused. As a recruiter, I should have had that information, because after then, any other recruitments, we had the conversations fully. We let people know that this is what you are going to be doing. This is what your job entails. Because we were not even happy as recruiters to have someone leave their job and come on another job, and in 30 days, they're without a job. So what are the interactions within leadership? What can people observe? Do they believe that their voice matters? These are the things that employees experience. They don't experience the strategy. They don't. And they vote with their feet when the culture is not right, no matter how good the strategy is. So retention problems are often culture problems, often. And how do you define a failing culture? A failing culture is defined by low trust. Why did an entire division leave in one day? Because they didn't trust that at any point in time, management was going to keep to its words. In any case, I believe they gave a long stretch. They waited to see, and they were not certain. Limited transparency. Everyone needs to know what is most important. Usually, people will say one thing and do another. I mean, when I spoke with this particular boss was able to give me the exact numbers that this chief officer had been given. But when it came to his core job function for which he was employed for, what he said was, he told him, sort out the unit. He told him, ensure that everything is in order in this place. So that was ambiguous, in my opinion. Not to mention the fact that it seemed like, oh, this was a scam. I was actually employed as a salesperson, but I wasn't told. And then again, the feedback that I got was, well, whoever is not going to meet his budget, when we're sharing our bonuses, you'll just be looking at us. So it was also punitive. So I'm employed for a particular role. I come, I'm expected to do something which ordinarily should come by way of inspiration. But here I will be penalized for not doing it. So when a gap exists between the stated values and the lived experience, staff are already thinking, I need to leave this place. I need to leave this place. And when culture signals contradict the strategic intent, employees experience confusion and frustration. So what is the intention? The intention is for us to grow the business. But when the signals are such that we can't be trusted, then people are going to be thinking of leaving. Employees now prioritize belonging. That guy felt totally out of place. Psychological safety. This guy could not tell his boss what he was going through. And purpose over salary. Now, let me tell you that when I spoke with the boss told me, I did everything I could. I'm totally embarrassed and angry with this person because I even gave him more. I approved more salary for him than his boss. And the figure he gave to me, it was up to a $10,000 difference. That was how much, he valued him as a new employee. But then he wasn't given the chance to prove anything because the strategic intent was different. It's usually not just about the salary. It's usually not about the benefits. It's not all about that. So what do we need to do? We need to align our culture to our strategy if we want to retain our top talents. Now, because we interview a whole lot of fine talents, when we ask them the question, why do you want to leave where you are, especially for those who want to leave within a period of 6 months or less, mostly after 6 months when they're on confirmation, they tell us the same thing. And what is that thing they tell us? They say, well, maybe I was told I would be given a car if I met this and this and this and this budgets. I've done that. Here I am, and it's not coming forth. I was told this and that and the other. So you find that there's a whole lot of lies going on, right from recruiters, not necessarily external consultants. Because I know when I was in banking, I know some people who came in and they said, well, HR lied to me. In fact, I know cases where CEOs have gone and hired people. They've done job hunts, they've done job fairs, they've gone to the best business schools, they've brought people in, and guess what? No, the moment the people come in, when they see their offer letter, they know they have been scammed. What do you think is going to happen? they're going to leave the organization. All they need is just to get the next job, the next offer, and they are out. So we must prioritize creating an environment where employees feel psychologically safe and included in the organization's purpose. So whatever the role in itself must be prioritized. And then whatever else, other additions that we need, they need to come by way of inspiration. Everybody should be happy at the results of the company and happy to join in. All right, I'm sure my time is up, if not almost up. So we need to promote trust and transparency, and we need to create environments, both physical and social, that encourage connection and belonging. So finally, I'd like to tell us that employees don't leave strategies, they leave cultures that make strategy execution just difficult. And when culture supports strategy, people stay and performance follows. But when strategy fails, your best people leave. So thank you. Juanita, I'll hand over to you.
Uchechi, thank you so much. Very interesting topic today. I'm going to hand over to Kuro to reflect on what you've just presented. Thank you very much. Kuro, over to you.
Apologies. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kuro,
Yeah.
we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Good morning. First of all, to Uchechi, the presenter, I've known her for a couple of years. The first thing I would say is thank you for bringing the topic to light. People avoid discussing things like this, first of all, especially management of many organizations. So from the presentation, and I'll go straight into that, because I also have some experience from with working with people, recruiting for people. And while I was doing my master's in managerial psychology, a lot of these issues came up. The presentation strongly articulates the central theme that culture, not strategy, shapes employee experience and retention. And that's true. That's why we heard from Peter Drucker that culture eats strategy for breakfast. If the culture is wrong, the way we do things, the generally acceptable way of doing things, if it is wrong, it will affect everything else that we do. The emphasis on the presentation was on psychological safety, trust, some of the things that were said towards the end, transparency, and leadership behavior that makes it both practicable and relatable. And I like that about the presentation. There's a clear link between cultural misalignment and talent loss. And in today's world, capturing talent is not easy. Keeping them is even more difficult. That's why we've advised people to start paying attention to stay interviews, not just recruitment interviews and exit interviews, but those that happen in the course of one stay in an organization. Clearly, another valid point is values in an organization and how they are lived by. So what most people do is to have values. I think the general way we call them is core values. Values that are written on boards, put in diaries, people memorize them. Somebody said something interesting one day. How about if we change our values into action words? Instead of saying core value is integrity, why don't you say something like, we will always do the right thing, or we'll always communicate properly, something like that. I think that's something else that Clinton also pointed out. Culture is also in communication, which is why it was very clear that when you mentioned, Uchechi, that people get offers for jobs and immediately feel like they are scammed. Even sometimes they get the offer, they think it's still okay, but once they start the job, they begin to see that. So those are things I also consider. I think two or three things I can mention that anyone can take away that I pulled out of the presentation, and I also added to where people need to understand that work is not just about how much people get paid. Many people think pay is a motivational factor at the workplace. No. Your pay is a hygiene factor. Other things motivational factors would include recognition, reward, and even things like culture and what we reward, and reprimand in the workplace. And I think if organizations have the right KPIs, clearly there was a misalignment with the example, the person she gave in the example. I think anybody could do sales in an organization, but you don't make sales a 50% KPI. For somebody who's your finance person, they will do poorly on the job you hired them for, and most likely also do poorly in sales. And then leadership really has to translate culture into what we do every day. Final note, I found out a long time ago. You can tell the culture of an organization by checking out what leadership promotes or disencourages very quickly. And those are things to take away. So anybody in the room today, if you're a leader of an organization, please begin to think about how this affects your talents, how it affects their stay. And every time you have high attrition, it affects your numbers, the same numbers you're chasing, and your culture needs to be clear. If that culture is poor in the organization, your customers will also feel it. Thank you very much, Uchechi Agwu. And to everybody else on the BSN platform, I was impressed. I joined last week. Today is my second time, and you probably will be seeing me a little more if I get a chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kuro.
Thank you, Kuro. Thank you so much. Very insightful reflection there. I think we can go over to questions because we have quite a number of questions coming out of this topic today. So Felix is asking, are there circumstances where people opt to stay because they are benefiting from bad culture?
Can you take that again, please?
Yes. Are there circumstances where people opt to stay because they are benefiting from a bad culture?
Okay. I didn't get the very first words, but I saw that, I heard that what happens in the case where people opt to stay because they are benefiting from, well, what I would say to that is that the workplace is a highly politicized environment. At every point in time, you find that people are watching out first and foremost for their personal interest. That is why so much lies on the shoulders of leadership, because it is only leadership that can encourage such an environment where people can be benefiting. So I would not blame the person that is staying because he's benefiting. I mean, it's to his or her own good. But why is that so? Why is the environment, let me just use the word toxic in the first place? Because leadership has encouraged it. So I wouldn't blame the person staying.
Thank you very much for that. Then Ibironka is asking, whose responsibility is it to ensure that the culture of the organization is sustained or possibly changed?
Whose responsibility is in the organization that?
To ensure that the culture of the organization is sustained or possibly changed.
Okay. I don't know if Kuro wants to go, but what I would say is that it rises and falls on leadership. The leader is the first person who defines what the culture is, because he or she sets the example which others follow. What do you say in meetings? How do you say it? Who do you acknowledge in meetings? Who do you feel is saying what needs to be heard? Whose voice are you listening to in meetings? When you send emails, what's the tone? You know, like we said, culture is experienced in the day-to-day interactions between people. So no doubt, if management comes and says, this, no more, then no more. And it starts from leadership to change what they want. The change they want to see starts from leadership.
Okay, thank you very much. Kuro, do you have a thought on that?
Yes, I totally agree with Uchechi, but I want to also mention something. You see, organizations over time begin to grow such that we must also pay attention to middle management. So I do agree that top leadership guides culture. I worked in an organization, for instance, where you could not come late to a meeting. I repeat, you could not come late. It was a criminal, it was like treasonable felony to arrive late at a meeting. Imagine how that cascaded down everywhere else. But there are also middle management issues, because there are then people who will be your cover, who you report to directly, who may not carry on that culture. So I want to also put some of the burden on the shoulders of middle management. And statistics have shown over time, many people resign from organizations because of the people they report to directly, the relationship with their supervisors and co. So yes, top management, but anybody listening today, if you're a middle manager, you are also a promoter of that culture, and people will do more of what you do than what you say. So you must model it every day.
Thank you, Kuro. Then we have George. George says, healthy organizational culture is a strategic imperative. Would you agree?
Yes, I do agree. It is a strategic imperative because culture is what you need to achieve the strategy. There's really you can't achieve strategy if culture is wrong, because culture is how you will achieve whatever you set out to. So you must be intentional about it. You must be intentional about it. Very intentional. You know, the company I'm talking about, we also train for them. And I said to one of the managers, I said, I believe everyone needs a selling skills training. And she says to me, oh, we do have a lot of training, a lot. In fact, we have weekly trainings. And I said, really? She said, yes. I said, is there any external person involved? She said, no, that they have meetings on a particular day of the week. And I'm like, no. I remember someone told me that you go off on this day and the next day is when you have the meeting. Those are review meetings where people are already traumatized by the numbers that they haven't met. So it's not possible that is a training session. And you can't be training and you have people who don't know what to do. Yeah. So it means you encourage a culture where hide what you know, because that is how you will excel. Remember, if you don't meet your budget, you won't get a bonus. So it's important to hide whatever you know, where the business is, who the clients are, just to be sure that you're better than the other person. So in that case, that intent is wrong. You have to be really strategic. You have to be, inspirational to get things done.
Yeah.
Thank you, Uchechi.
Okay. Correct.
Sorry, Kuro, did you want to add to that?
Yes, I wanted to add something that I think is important. So because I'm in learning and development, I like to break things down to simple ways. We need to capture culture properly to then know how important it is. Culture is the acceptable way of behavior, which means the way we think, the way we act, the way we take decisions. So imagine that you have a fantastic strategy that would 10x your revenues in 1 year, whatever the strategy is. But the way we do things is such that you submit your reports at your own time, or you come to work when you choose to. If the strategy is speed, strategy has failed. So we cannot talk about strategy without understanding the culture that will drive that strategy. Culture is the way you do things every day. And many companies don't have clear-cut cultures set. Everybody should be talking to Uchechi to help you develop a culture document of some sort. If you don't define the culture of your company, guess what? People will define their own cultures in small silos, in small pockets. In our unit, if it's someone's birthday, we buy them a cake. In their own unit, if it's somebody's birthday, they buy us lunch. If you don't define the culture, right, people will simply create their own small culture. So what will happen is you will then have clients or customers who get a different experience with one part of the organization compared to when they go to another part or another arm of the organization. I think it's extremely important that people pay attention to what the culture is. What is the acceptable way of doing things? And that's how societies evolve. Organizations should pay attention to the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Kuro. Then we have a question from Hans. He says, do you agree that the concrete example addresses the influence of leadership on culture? What can you do to help the leader you mentioned be open to the perspectives of his departed employee?
Please take that again.
No problem. He says, do you agree that the concrete example addresses the influence of leadership on culture? What can you do to help the leader that you mentioned be open to the perspectives of his departed employee?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Kuro, you can go ahead.
Go first. Kuro, go first.
Okay, so leaders are not very good at receiving feedback that does not align with what they want to hear. That's the truth. We see this all the time. So a couple of things could happen. Give them a reason to agree that a 360-degree feedback appraisal process would help. Allow people who are junior to say something about people they report to. Let it go to somebody in the organization, not the whole of HR. And let HR use that information, for instance, to determine how Kuro, who is Paul's boss, needs to go for an anger management course before he shoots everybody down. Something like that. All right? That's one thing to consider. Now, for the leader in particular, the focus from the leadership, which Uchechi mentioned, is the numbers. You can make the numbers in the year to day from pressure, from meetings every day. I've done that. I did it in banking all the time. But it's usually not sustainable, which is why there's high attrition, people leave, and then relationships with customers are truncated. So when someone gets to the point of this pressure, I can't take it anymore, they walk away, the customer loses that connect and walks away. So a sit down. We had a boss who had a strategy session earlier in the year, and we had to have a meeting with him 4 days ahead. Do you want us to do a session, collect your money and walk away? Or do you want the truth? He says, I want the truth. Good. So we'll allow your team members share with us anonymously, and we'll take that information, the raw data, and bring it to you, and also show you the implications. The guy saw it 2 days from the strategy session and said, sorry, can we postpone this strategy session? Because I don't think I'm ready for it yet. The kind of feedback he got from anonymous tips from his people, right? So the people need to be told clearly and honestly. In the moment, you can use your strategy, culture, whether culture is aligned or not, and achieve what you want in the short term. But when you register a business as a going concern, it's supposed to be there in perpetuity. If you don't create systems and cultures that can continue to run that strategy, it will fail.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Kuro.
All right, so
Uchechi, do you have a last word on that? Do you have a last word on that before we close?
Okay, so my last word on this is that for every leader, we must learn to self-reflect.
Yeah.
If we don't engage in self-reflection, we're going to keep making the same mistakes. I had a word with this leader, and this leader says to me, listen, Uche, I've taken this company 100 times above where they were in the last couple of years since I've been the boss. I used this strategy, it worked, and I'm going to keep using it. So there's not much you can do, but bring the person to a point where you can deeply reflect to see the role you've played in the exits, because this is about staff retention. So management needs to go back and reflect. So let's all learn to deeply reflect so that we can move our organizations forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Uchechi. We cannot take any more questions now. We're out of time, but there's so many questions left, really a hot topic. But I do love the comment that was made by Tiffany to say that I believe that the culture of the organization is everybody's responsibility. I quite fancy that comment. Everybody has a role to play. Uchechi, Kuro, thank you so much for your presentation this morning. A lot of questions left unanswered. We may have to get back to these at a later stage. We have our next topic, our topic for next week is going to be responsible leadership in the age of AI. So another very hot topic, I think that's going to breed a lot of conversation and questions. Our speaker is Pascal Mariani, is the CEO and co-founder of Sil AI BV, the company that is behind EduGPT, GovGPT, and OrgGPT. So we'll see you next week, Tuesday again, same time, same place. Thank you very much for spending time with us this morning. Much appreciated. All have a lovely day.